Hey everyone, this is a build video for a 3D card that I got commissioned at Eastridge Card Show. This is for a gentleman who requested for me to create a 3D card out of Charizard EXs. I believe these are from the Charizard X and Y tins from a couple months ago. He got me 2 cards, but I wanted to add a third one just to give it a better pop-up look. So I'm going to pull a third card out of my collection to help build this. Here you can see that I am making the initial cuts to the second layer of the card. In this case, I wanted the main body of the Charizard to pop out a little bit more from the background. So I am cutting elements around the card, around the body of the Charizard in order to retain its shape and its 3D look. So I'm cutting the background all around the outline of the body. It's pretty precise. I'm using a X-Acto knife here, a fresh blade with each card that I make in order to try to get as close to the lines as I can. It can get a little messy, so you can see me popping up different areas to try to pull out the pieces. This is the first EX card I've ever done. I've done full arts, I've done illustration rares, and of course common bulk cards. But this is a little bit different than my usual Omega EX card, just because there's a lot of elements and flames that sort of pull out of it. Here I'm trying to look at how it would look when I stack the cards. The third card here, I was more interested in cutting out the sort of flames that were shooting out from the Charizard. So I was actually just cutting around each one of the flame borders to get the majority of the center cut out. This is going to be the top layer, so I wanted them to be in the foreground. But looking at the art, I kind of wanted to include the arm of the Charizard to make it pop out just a little bit more. So I'm cutting around the edges to keep it all in. And sometimes when you're cutting around corners or angles where things meet, lines meet, you're not going to get a clean connection. So you're going to have to go back in to make sure that the cuts are touching each other. That's why I am pressing down with the X-Acto knife to sort of try to push and arrange them out without damaging the cuts. Now that I have my cuts done, sometimes when cutting these foil cards, the edges of your cuts will lift up a little bit just by nature of the knife cutting through. So I'm using a burnishing tool here to sort of flatten the edges, just so that they have a cleaner look. Not really necessary, but it's something that I like to do just to sort of flatten out the cuts. Typically when assembling the 3D cards, the shadow box cards, I apply black ink or marker or paint to the overlap where the layers on top are supposed to cast the quote-unquote shadow to the card beneath it. Since this is an EX card, typically I would do this with black, but because it's all sort of a metallic card, I wanted to give it a little bit of extra shine. So I'm using a acrylic metal chrome marker here to sort of draw and color in the shadows on the under layers. Besides that, because Pokemon cards, or most TCGs rather, are layers of cardboard, when you cut through them for these 3D cards, there will be that layer of white sort of in between the two cards pressing together. So in order to make that look a little bit cleaner, I am coloring the edges of the card so that they just don't sort of look like that raw paper. Typically, I would also use black paint or a marker for this to color in the edges black to give that more sort of cartoonish outline. But I just really thought that the EX sort of metal look of the card all around looked really cool with the foil, so I decided to use a gold outline for the Charizard instead to give that little bit of blended shine, because the card's mostly yellow, orange, and red anyways. I've done this before on another commission for a Chandelure, so that looked pretty good at that time, so I'm using that same sort of color balance here on the Charizard X card. just making sure to color in every layer of the cards where you've made cuts, just so it doesn't sort of, look too janky with the paper cuts. When you zoom in here before I color them in with the paint marker, you can see that white kind of stands out in a way that I don't really like. So I just made sure to color in and cover that whiteness as much as I could with the gold marker here. And once you get all the edges and the background shadows are colored in, then you're pretty much done with the color prep on these cards. With other 3D cards I've done, typically I cut out energy cards to give spacers or that depth of 3D as I layer the cards. For this one, because I only had 3 really available, I didn't really want to use the energy cards because typically that's used to give a level of depth in the layering. So instead I used double-sided sort of foam stickies here to start the layering. I attach it to the first layer, layer the middle layer over it, double check, align, make sure it looks good, and then go ahead and cut additional stickies for the middle layer so I can attach the final layer on top. This works really well when you have an even amount of depth, or if you're just trying to use fewer cards in your cuts and your 3D pieces. We can see here that I layer on top and it looks really nice. For me, I like having these as little display pieces, so I use 180 point these mag touch cases that you can buy online or on Amazon. They fit in quite nicely for the amount of depth that I usually make these cards in. So you just slide it in, place in my little logo, and close out the case, and you just have a very nice and neat display piece. I know it's a little bit harder to see because of my light for recording the video, but it does really sort of pop out and look very bright in person. I handed this off to the original commissioner earlier this week, and they were very happy with it. I was very happy with it, so I hope you all enjoy. Look out for the next one.